Afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on what part of the world you're in, or evening. I know we have some European counterparts. So my name's Kyle Daeley. I'm the head of business development for Augmenta. It's a variable rate, real-time variable rate sensor that came out of Greece. But today, the topic I wanted to talk about was data compatibility and transparency. I hear a lot of sales pitches when I go to trade shows, so I thought this might be a little bit better change of pace, and it's something we've all dealt with. You know, whether you're a farmer who's bought a lot of precision ag tech, or a distributor, you know, or a manufacturer, you know, we've all dealt with it of how do we get our data, how do we stack those data layers, and how do we use them best, you know, to ultimately get that best ROI on all the tech we have. So a little background on me. I've been in ag tech for a little over 10 years now. I have an MBA from Baylor here in Texas, where I'm from. Augmenta is my 5th startup, so this is not my first rodeo. I was at Hydrobio, that was acquired by Monsanto back in 2013. I was at Centech, which was acquired by Galcon a couple of years ago. And then most recently, I was at Indigo. I co-led a technology validation team. So I've had my hands on just about every piece of ag tech hardware within the past couple of years. And I had an opportunity to really dissect on a grower experience, field experience, data experience level all of these and really determine the value proposition. You know, why are the techs there? Are they going to be around in a couple of years? So leaning into that, just the little one slider on our tech, so everybody kind of gets it. It sits in the same realm as the green seekers or the Yara Ns in the beginning. So a real-time variable rate nitrogen sensor that gives the growers the ability to do on the fly variable rate, not a traditional prescription map. Where we then go past that is we're not only nitrogen, we also do cotton plant growth regulator. You can also use that in rapeseed. And then we also came out with defoliant or harvest aid. And then our future offerings that are hopefully to come out this next upcoming year is a stand count and selective spot spraying, so green versus brown. And one of the big things that I like to emphasize on this is we use the agronomist base rate. And that is really critical. I know a lot of tech companies want to come out and say, look, our sensor knows better than the grower, better than the agronomist, and it's just not possible. We don't know the fertility plan. We don't know what the farmer's been doing on their field for the past 20, 50, 100 years. We have to be friends and partners with the people making these decisions every day. And so the way we do that is we use the base rate and then we optimize it on a percentage change. So we've seen 12% savings on average, and I actually have about a 2% yield increase. We don't claim the yield increase right now because there's too many variables to say why that might have happened that year versus another. But that does show by decreasing that 12%, you're not taking a yield decrease. You know, you're not sacrificing yields to save it. So really on to why y'all are all here listening to me talk for the next 20 minutes or so. We've all seen this, you know, we've all gone to a grower, or we've all gone to an agronomist, and they open up their computer and they just have 1,000 windows open. And the biggest problem with this is every window is giving a different answer that the grower's trying to ultimately make one answer. If their soil moisture probe says 1, their aerial imagery says 2, their agronomist is saying 1.5, Augmenta is saying 1.7, what's the right answer? Well, they're all correct, but if we could stack those layers? And then the answer is 1.68. There's the real answer. But historically, we haven't been able to do that. 10 years ago, really when ag tech got big and it got hot and exciting, all these companies came out to existence. This is just last year's. We've all seen them. And everybody had their own platform, everybody had their own file format, and everybody wanted to go to the grower and say, look, our tech is going to make you this much more efficient. And it's true. And it really did get us past the traditional flat rate of doing a lot of things. But with all these companies that came out, came the kind of the first problem that I saw, that data equals money. And yes, data is incredibly valuable, but I think it's convoluted to the point that growers don't want to give up data. They've been told their data has value, and it does. But when it sits on a flash drive in a proprietary format, what can you really do with that data? And the answer is not much. Unless you have a master's degree in remote sensing or plant soil science or something, then you can really get into the raw data and super clunky and work into SMS and get all that data. There's your answer. So I wanted to look back a little bit of how all this kind of started. Ag tech has been around forever. Thermal imagery came out in the 70s and then kind of dissipated. If you look back into the early 2000s, 2005, ag tech started to kind of come back. Auto steer was getting mass adoption. Variable rate, you're creating a map based on grids. We're starting RTK, so increased GPS accuracy. Satellite imagery, I sold it. Was just getting started. And everybody looked back to the 70s and said, look, we tried satellite imagery once, it didn't work. Well, now, if you look into the next wave, post 2010, satellite imagery is free. You can get it on any major platform if you sign up for it. And it's increased efficiencies. And now every farmer I know gets satellite imagery. Now they've looked at aerial imagery, they've looked at drone imagery. They're getting CAN plugs put into their tractors to get their machine data. But again, when all those came out, and I think we're just now getting on the tail end of this wave, everybody said, great, all this data is wonderful, we're going to lock it. If you want your machine data, you have to go to the machine platform. If you want your soil moisture data, you have to go to that platform. And then, in the tail end of this wave, platforms started to come out. Look, we'll do all the headache, just buy our platform and we'll do it. And so now we look ahead, and Augmenta, for an example, ISOBus is a universal protocol that's been, in principle, agreed by all machinery manufacturers that they will offer it. Now, they might still use their own, but they are slowly moving into ISOBus. I've spoken with almost all the manufacturers of monitors, and all of their proprietary formatting has been sunsetted or is being sunsetted within the next couple of years. The same goes for communication systems. LoRa, Sigfox, we hear a lot of these. Are we ready to move past cellular? Well, I think there's still a lot of work to do there, but I also think cellular is getting cheaper, and we'll see where that goes. So as I had talked about, and I got a little ahead of myself, it's the multi-data sources that is the problem. And the grower gets fed up with it. They run out of time, they close the computer, and they go back to what they were doing. And then they cancel all the technology, And that's not the goal of precision ag. The goal of precision ag is to get better at what we're doing, not create more headaches. So this is an example of some monitors. You know, if you look in that pre-2015, 2005 era, everything was proprietary, or you had to have an unlock code, or it just wasn't supported at all. They didn't want or have the capabilities to do variable rate. So by having this problem, here was the grower experience and the customer. The sale of the technology and convincing them, a grower, to buy a technology was hard enough. But then, as you can see from the customer path, there's way more ways that sale is going to die, or they're not going to renew, because it was heavily supported by the grower. So you sold the technology, then you went out to install, and if you look back at this map, is it compatible? Well, there's some there that just straight weren't. Well, okay, we're not compatible with 3 of them. Nope, give them a refund. Okay, we're compatible. So now we go to the next one. Grower has to set all the data. Grower has to call their dealer. Grower has to call somebody and get a code, probably pay for the code. Well, that's annoying. There's a high probability the grower is just going to call and say, never mind, this is too hard, refund. We haven't even gotten to, does the product deliver what it was sold, how it was sold? We have 2 chances for this grower to already close his computer on this technology. So does the product deliver? There's $1 million answer why the company's in business. No, that's a given. Refund, or obviously won't renew. Yes, probability will renew. We've gone through all the headache. And then, is that data set compatible? Can they export it into a shape file? Can they put it into their preferred platform? It was a nice to have, not a need to have in this generation. But it was also a potential for them to say no. It was their out, kind of last chance. So post 2015, as I had said, most of the companies have agreed in principle to isobus. And so now there's not locks. So now when you look at a grower experience, really the first question is, where do we put my data? I get asked that pretty much on the nose of, that's great. Can you put it in the climate? Can you put it into my John Deere? Can you put it into SMS? Can I export it via shapefile? It is one of the first 5 questions I get asked when I'm selling it. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's the first question. And then we go on to an install. We're pretty much easy, but I did all the legwork, my team. It's not on the grower to say, hey, go get this code, call John Deere, get that. We had to do that. That was on us. Before it was, well, we can't give you that. It's grower data. Then it's the product. Does the product deliver? So that is definitely how the customer experience is changing. So where I see compatibility going, and it's critical with events like this, with develop with Deere that they're putting on, we have to figure this out together, because ultimately our customers that we serve, the growers, are adopting precision ag. They all have something, the majority. But how do we get there? And how do we put it into a platform that the average grower can use and not have to code or get into back-end data and look at raw data and try to figure out a magical answer. So I believe we are going in the right direction, which is the legacy proprietary data formats. They're gone. They're going. Everybody's kind of opening it up, saying, look, we all have to agree. You have to be able to take a shapefile. So past that, I fully believe, in my personal opinion, if you lock data into a platform and won't share it, the tech will not be around within the next 10 years. Locking one piece of the puzzle won't be accepted by the market. Growers are going to demand that we do it. Co-ops are going to demand that we do it, and they should. That you need my application map that we just made, right? That needs to be able to go into a platform for record keeping so that the grower has it. They know when they applied, what they applied, when they applied it, so they can make decisions. And I think that is really where we have to go in the market. And it's definitely a hot topic, I know, but that's really the short of what I have. So I appreciate it. And I should have left about 10 minutes. I actually gave myself a little extra for a little bit of Q&A.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat on the side, and we'll get Kyle to answer them. I see here that Jill Costa raised her hand using the center button. Jill, if you have a question, could you write it on the side? Okay, so here's one. A comment: open data economy is the future. Those who join will succeed.
Well, that's always good affirmation.
And I don't mean that the data is free, but available. It's a follow-up comment.
So I would say to that, obviously, my question to you would be, if they buy the hardware, for example, at Augmenta, the data is the farmers, ultimately, right? They bought the hardware to do the product, so do you sell the data back? I don't think that would work. Is that what we're asking?
Okay. Lorraine has a question. Within the mining industry, there are efforts to create an open mining format for data sharing. Do you see something similar happening in ag?
I do, because Isobus is a really good example of that. Probably 10 years ago, whether it was Ag Leader or Raven, John Deere, Case, they all had a locked system. To get into their monitor, you had to put in a special code that only a dealer could generate for you to use a third-party technology like ours. Now, they're all Isobus compatible. Now, some of them are still using proprietary stuff, but it's going much more open source. And I think that was demanded by the market. The 2630, one of the older monitors for John Deere, it got sunsetted in June. And I think that's going to be their way of open sourcing to get people to upgrade to a newer version of it's unlocked. We're friends with everybody.
Okay. Lorraine says thank you. Don't have any more questions yet. There we go. Another from Lorraine. Is cloud data storage needed in this space?
So yes, but I think you could also pass it through ultimately to whatever platform the grower wants to use. So for example, our hardware, the algorithm and the variable rate of it, the system does itself. It doesn't need a wireless connection. It doesn't need anything like that, but it does to push the results to get a report. Now we could hold it there temporarily and then push it to whatever platform the grower wants to use. And ultimately they pay for that platform. So that's where the cloud data storage costs would come in and where they maintain that data.
Question from Steve. Who do you see leading this initiative? Will companies like JD or AGCO play nicely eventually, or will it take government regulation or academic groups, etc.?
I think it's John Deere and AGCO playing nice reluctantly is the best way from who I've spoken with. And it's because, again, they were forced, really. The market said, look, a locked system isn't going to be there anymore. Like I said, I was speaking with a John Deere dealer the other day, and they're creating buckets of tiers, and just within the tier will unlock certain things. So again, with our hardware, for example, it's just in the top tier for the sprayer. So when the grower unlocks that top tier, he automatically has the code that could work with our system. You know, we don't have to go find the code.
Okay, Carly has an add-on to cloud storage. How do we bridge during a time when internet access on farms can be very limited?
So a very good question. A lot of the hardwares that I know usually have decent internal storage. And basically it's designed till it comes home, you know, until you get back to the farmhouse with Wi-Fi, then it'll do a massive upload. So that's kind of the best way I've seen. Now, if you leave a tech out permanently, eventually it does need to come home and you risk losing that data.
Don is asking, if the data is valuable and the farmer owns the data, how should the farmer trust the use of their data without a transaction agreement?
So that's where, you know, the platform they use and why I'm a firm believer of, you know, all API data to anyone is it's the grower's data, and they've agreed or they're comfortable with the user agreement of the platform that they've chosen to use. And I know some tech companies don't export at all. And again, I believe they won't be around because the data does have value, but ultimately it's to the grower that we need to create that value. And so putting it into the platform that they are comfortable with and they trust and the user experience is right, I think is the best way to get there.
Okay. Do you see the need for blockchain or similar technology to verify data in the future? For example, for traceability purposes, is it solution for the trust issue that Don mentioned?
So I think there's going to be verification if the grower is changing their practices and going after a lot of the sustainability premiums that we've all started to hear about, carbon sequestration, or a decrease in water or decrease in nitrogen, you can get government money back. You can get, in the States, you can get a premium from a big brand to do that. If you start to sell your crop in that path, then yes, the data will have to be verified and, you know, shown that it's correct. But if a grower is just using it and farming in a more traditional way, and they're just trying to optimize their operation, I don't think it would need to be verified, just for their own personal use.
Okay. Does anyone else? We might have time for one more question. Don has come back with, thank you. However, no legal agreement ever on the internet has been read fully by anyone except the lawyer who wrote it. This does not build trust.
Very true, Don, very true. Yeah, that's, again, I think that's where the grower just has to be comfortable with the platform they choose to use. But again, as long as the platform always has an export option, the day the grower isn't comfortable with it, they change their policy of some kind, there's a full export and delete feature.
What about calibration issues to ensure data remains correct?
So I think that falls to each tech. So like our system calibrates every field. So when it turns on, it scans the first 100 feet to do a calibration and then creates a high, mid, and low for that field. Now, other systems, that's just going to be standard maintenance or replacing of them. But to your point, if the data starts to become skewed, you know, how do we catch that? And if you don't have a web platform, then you don't know. So there's a little bit of pros and cons there.
Okay, so I guess that's it for this particular session. Thank you very much, everyone, for staying with us and listening to Kyle. If you do have any questions for Kyle, feel free to connect with him directly through one of the private chats. We can also add a question here if needed, and we can get them to Kyle and he can reach out to you. So thank you very much, Kyle.
Yeah, thank y'all for sitting and listening to me, and enjoy the conference.